Meanwhile, 4 men are now being questioned about the murder of Ciaran Heffron, the Catholic student shot dead in Crumlin at the weekend. As Jane Lockery reports, police have renewed their appeal for information about the killing, which is being blamed on the LVF.
Protestants and Catholics in Crumlin are united in grief, asking only one question after the weekend murder of Ciaran Heffron. The 22-year-old student had spent Friday evening with friends in a bar in the village before setting out for home at 1:45 in the morning. Ciaran took a shortcut through the railway station. It was there that he met his killers, who shot him 7 times in the head. At 3 o'clock, a taxi driver found his body and he flagged down a local paramedic who tried in vain to save his life.
In my heart of hearts, I knew that there's no way this young man was ever going to survive the ordeal that he'd been put through.
How did you feel?
Absolutely helpless, terrible, because there were a couple of nurses that came on the scene as well, and I'd said about giving me a hand, and I said about my equipment, I said I've got the best equipment here in the world. I said, but there's not a goddamn thing you're going to be able to do with it now, you know. I actually saw his father coming over the bridge to be met by the police, you know, and the fact his father actually coming out looking for him shows you what a family he comes from, that he is expected in at all times.
Ciaran was the youngest of 5 children. He'd been studying retail management at the University of Ulster at Coleraine and worked part-time at the airport. He'd returned home for the weekend because his mother is seriously ill, suffering from cancer.
Ciaran had went to work first of all, and he worked in the airport, and then he left the airport job and he had another job, but he wasn't really satisfied with that there, and he felt that he wasn't doing himself justice, and people encouraged him to go back to further education, and he did that. He just had went back to university this year. Ciaran was only at this very beginning of his life, you know, and he had everything to live for.
Today the flag at Coleraine campus was flying at half-mast as students returning after the weekend learned that their colleague had been murdered, a murder which police believe was sectarian. But religious differences were invisible in Crumlin on Sunday as people from every denomination prayed for Ciaran's family. He regularly attended Mass at the Mater Dei Catholic Church.
I think in chapel this morning there'll be a lot of soul searching, a lot of thinking of how to make a better future for Northern Ireland.
Don't know what's going on in this country. It used to be called the land of the saints and scholars. Very few scholars, and then certainly no saints.
The Presbyterian minister has spent time with the Heffron family, and as his church opened its doors to welcome worshippers, the congregation expressed its horror at the murder of the young Catholic man.
It's just unbelievable that something like this can happen in our community, and our hearts go out to the family.
Something just words can't express, the sadness for the family and the revulsion for those who would commit such an act in anyone's name, whoever's name they claim to have done it in.
Across the road at Crumlin Zealand Church, the pastor and his wife have tried to comfort Ciaran's family. Their 17-year-old son was murdered by the IPLO in Belfast 6 years ago.
Everybody bleeds the same. There's no difference of colour, of blood. I'm sure other people will say practically the same thing as we're saying. They're sick and tired of these troubles, and all people want to do is live in peace.
A minute's silence will be observed at the University of Ulster at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, when Ciaran Heffron will be laid to rest in a village where the feelings of its community are reflected in a few simple words. Jane Lockery, UTV Live, Crumlin.
The DUP this morning described the killing as atrocious, abominable and diabolical. The murder of Ciaran Heffron has been linked to the LVF, the group also responsible for a series of recent killings. LVF supporters were prominent at a no rally in Antrim on Friday, also attended by a senior DUP member. Fergal McKinney reports.
The No to the Agreement rally in Antrim on Friday evening, attended by the DUP's Sammy Wilson, there to give the party's view of the document.
He would rather that the terms of the Plains Commission would be broken, rather than that the people of Northern Ireland would know the extent of the treachery.
Also there, No supporter Pauline Gilmore.
Their prisoners are proud to do their time because they were proud to serve Ulster.
blue-shirted LVF supporters were prominent in the rally. It's not the first time the LVF and the DUP have shared the same platform. In September 2 years ago, the party's William McRae joined with the group's leader, terrorist Billy Wright, in Portadown. And in March this year, 2 party members addressed a Portadown rally, at which a close confidant of Billy Wright's was also present. The DUP has made it clear it abhors the killing, but was asked in the light of LVF terror, shouldn't members of the party consider carefully speaking at rallies at which people intent on continuing violence were also present.
We don't know who's in the crowd. You can't tell us
Shouldn't
who's
your
in the
man
crowd.
withdraw?
You can't.
Shouldn't your man withdraw?
Not at all. I don't withdraw.
Silly.
I was at
Are
a
you
church.
denying us our right to speak to people? So because there's 1,000 people at a meeting and one comes along that you believe is in the LVF, that the 999 should not hear our message. Have a bit of sense, would you?
But the Ulster Unionists say lessons of the past must be remembered.
We had examples in the 1970s where people went to rallies, heard inflammatory speeches and went on to commit acts of violence. That is, nobody can argue against that. And I'm simply saying that if we do nothing else in this campaign, let us learn, let us avoid it. And I'm saying, as far as my own party is concerned, I'm suggesting to my colleagues they stay away.
Former paramilitary, the PUP's David Irvine, has called for tempered language.
Stridence and the hysteria that I think they attempt to generate, and the hatred which one is inclined to believe or perceive that lies behind the rhetoric is not something that the populace ignore. And I think we should be all aware of that.
There's less than a month to the referendum and many more political meetings ahead. Fergal McKinney, UTV Live.
The only sound which could be heard in Crumlin this morning was the driving rain, which beat down on the umbrellas of mourners as they gathered to pay their last respects to Ciaran Heffron, the 22-year-old Catholic student who was gunned down as he took a shortcut home. Hugh Heffron, who'd set out to find his son on that fateful Saturday morning, only to be told that he'd been murdered, helped carry Ciaran's coffin at one stage. His brother and 3 sisters, clasping red roses, followed. His mother, who's seriously ill, suffering from cancer, travelled by car. Every shop and office was closed, and the villagers, Protestant and Catholic, united in grief, lined the entire route to the church. The cortege paused as it passed the spot where Ciaran's body had been found. At the same time, a minute's silence was being observed in all 4 of the University of Ulster's campuses, where Ciaran was a student. The mile journey from the family home to the Mater Dei Catholic Church took over an hour, as more and more people gathered to say a final farewell. The congregation, who couldn't fit inside the packed church, where Ciaran himself used to attend Mass with his family on a Sunday, heard the parish priest say his sectarian murderers were inspired by the devil.
Sometime on Friday evening, some evil men decided that a Catholic young man should die in Crumlin. The only reason for his killing was his religion. God had given these men the gift of free will to make decisions, to do things that are good or noble, or to make a decision to do something cruel, cowardly and vicious. And inspired by the devil, they made the decision to kill an innocent young man, Ciaran Heffron, and duly carried out that killing.
The auxiliary bishop of Down and Connor said we must not give in to those who want to destroy our community. We must continue to pray for an end to sectarianism.
No one can claim for himself the right directly to destroy an innocent human being. However, in the twisted mentality of the murderers, Ciaran was not an innocent victim. He was guilty of being a Catholic. What makes his murder even more heinous is that it was done when so many people in this land are fervently praying for a just and a lasting peace.
As Ciaran Heffron was laid to rest at St James's Cemetery, Father O'Sullivan remarked that a fitting tribute to the murdered student would be for others to imitate his standards of tolerance and friendship. Jane Lockery, UTV Live, Crumlin.